Same
The
thing.
only,
Hello.
I have
We're starting the
I have
show.
16 co-hosts. Okay.
Oh, we got a little secret there. Welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. This is, of course, somewhere between a interview chat show and a post-con hangout and a. What if I started pitching this thing as how you break into the games industry? What if I start? I'm thinking of 2025 of being like a grifter, of just like, just say like, oh yeah, what if I just put 30 under 30 in my bio and started like calling myself a CEO.
Indiepocalypse 30 under 30.
Oh yeah, I'm not even. I mean, not at 30, but I can just still say that I am. Who will know? Who checks those things? I don't think anybody checks those things.
Yeah, nobody checks them. Yeah.
Right. Like I should just truly start lying, and then people will be like, oh wow, such a respected figure. They hire a bunch of freelancers and call it a new business.
Seems pretty common amongst CEOs nowadays.
Yes. How do I get my puff pieces? Where do I get like my watch? Like I want to do. When do I get to take that kind of like puff piece photo where I'm like in a city landscape and I am like sitting with like my arm over my knee, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But here's enough. We have enough preamble. My preamble I planned for this show is that I've become an expert at catching crickets. I am unstoppable. I can hear them and I can echolocate them in a room, and then I can scoop them up into my tube and launch them outside where they belong with all their friends. They do not belong acting as a alarm in this room for me when I try to sleep. But we are here. I'm Andrew. I don't know how. It's weird whenever podcast hosts introduce themselves because, like, how did you get here? I guess if you're coming for the guest, you're like, who's this host person? But I'm Andrew. I host the show. The show being Indiepocalypse Radio, which is all that stuff about it that I said earlier. We are here with a trio of game developers, two from Indiepocalypse, and one that filled out the form, and I say this in the kindest terms, invited themselves on the show, which I wish more people would do. It makes my scheduling a lot easier if people are like, hey, I have a thing to release. I should promote it. And game devs, I don't know, retweet each other's stuff. They don't have shows as much, I guess. Anyway, we are here with our first guest who... Oh, I don't want this window. I want a different window. This is the one I want. Who you may know in the context of Indiepocalypse from Indiepocalypse 55 with Hurt Me, Please, is Jude Pinto. Jude, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Great to be here.
Yes.
And thanks for organizing this. I also feel so much less crazy because I was trying to look up everyone's games on Indiepocalypse before this, and I could not find Lucas's on there.
Yes.
So now having that context, I'm like, I feel great.
That is why you could not find it.
Yeah, exactly.
It happens sometimes, and I'm like, I wish it would happen. Like, my podcast diet is 95% like comedy podcasts, and they are always on promoting each other's stuff. And I always wish game devs would have something similar to that, of like something that is besides just like reposting, because I think those are mostly useless and mostly only and also really only serve a very tiny niche of games that like repost well, like
Vibe curation.
right. Twine games, Bitsy games, visual. A lot of these things do not repost well. Very text-heavy games, like for better or for worse, for better or for worse for promoting. But that's beside the point. To the point is, well, first question I gotta. There is a standard Apocalypse question, but I have a variation of it for commissioned developers, such as yourself, which is, did you know what it was before I emailed you, it being Indiepocalypse?
I had heard Indiepocalypse, the word.
Okay.
In passing, and I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know exactly what it was.
Okay, so it could have been about the concept of there being too many indie games. so that it would be impossible for any indie dev to succeed nowadays. Which is truly unfortunate that they made too many indie games.
There's too many out there.
I wish they would just like stop making so many of them. But what are you gonna do? I only want ones with game. Speaking of people who make too many indie games, you're contributing to that pile. If people aren't familiar, what is Hurt Me Please?
So Hurt Me Please is I guess I just wanted to experiment with the walking sim genre.
Yeah.
And I'd been thinking about like the concept of drawing in 3D space for a while. I was just curious about like a walking sim where you reveal things in space by drawing. But I guess plot-wise and narratively, I was also thinking a lot about like toxic relationships, but also thinking about how like I think when people think about toxic relationships and like abusive relationships, it feels very one-sided, like there's a bad guy and a good guy. And I was thinking about how like I think the voice in the game is kind of the victim, but also does a lot of and says a lot of really like troubling things. I was like interested in kind of exploring that dynamic narratively.
Right, and it's weird how like also like online has like amplified that in a very weird way. Of like
so true, yeah.
Like you like then you can like okay, well this person is, it changes the context of what a bad person means, and that a bad person must be like, I don't know, socially eliminated.
No, totally, and also thinking about how like, I mean, I wouldn't say that the voice in the game that you're talking to is like, I wouldn't say that they're free of blame for anything.
Right.
But at the same time, it's sort of like, okay, if somebody is really deeply hurt and then they respond in a very inappropriate and hurtful way, like, I guess, how does that, I think narratively, especially when we're reading books or watching movies or playing games, again, there's this like antagonist-protagonist dynamic that we're always looking at and thinking about how, like, just because somebody is hurt doesn't mean that they're free of blame, but at the same time, like, how does the way that somebody is hurt influence how they respond to like a very deep kind of pain?
Yeah, right. Because we're not, perfect people. People are. We're big messy blobs of meat that somehow think too much.
Well said. I think that line was in the Bible.
Yeah, it is. And I think the burning bush might have said it, perhaps at some point. Yeah. He's like, "You guys got to get your act together."
They're messy, meaty blobs.
Yes, that think too. I always think about how we think too much for animals. That is.
And and it's funny you say that because I'd been having like really bad artists and game dev block for a really long time, so being able to work on this game was great. But yeah, like the original idea I had was so different from what it ended up being because I was just thinking too much.
Yes, right.
Really, just thinking too much.
Yeah, and I think what I want to part of the commission is also to encourage people should pay people to make games. Like I think commissioning games is a cool thing you can do out there in the world. But also like games like just make something that has no pressure, no requirements. You're not judged on anything. It's not like a competition. There's not like you don't have to worry about making all your money back or whatever. And it's just hey, short form game development. And then a thing
that is exactly how I felt like approaching this. It was a really awesome experience. And I know before the show we were talking about how you're like, oh yeah, it's like Indiepocalypse is like networking, except I don't give you a job. But it's
right.
Like, no, this really felt like so much more than that. It really was an opportunity for me to be creative again with like no pressure. And also like being able to be a part of the group of people who made games also felt really special.
Yeah, and there is Right, there are these little like sub clicks and sub clicks within it of like, oh no, I was a commission, but also it's like, I always say worst case scenario, if when an Indiepocalypse comes out, at least each game developer has 10 or 9 new fans, in each other.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, oh well, I got this free copy of a thing, I might as well check out the other 9 games in there. And there is like, in the same way, I guess it's kind of like all of this is trying to, I don't know, get away from the hustle, I guess, or like the rigidity of that feels like is in games too much of like what games should be, or what even like, I don't know, experimental games should be, what indie games should be. And
No, absolutely. Yeah, like I even think about nowadays when I make games, I always feel like because it takes a lot of time and work to make
right.
a game of any size, and I'm constantly thinking about like, oh, I want to be creative and I want to do this, but with the amount of time that I have and also working, etc., there's a lot of it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult to be a game designer nowadays.
Right, because it's like I feel like there's also like a lack of outlets, for like when you've made something, you just because there is like you dump it on itch, and hope for the best. Like that is like your outlet primarily.
No, totally. Or like you post it on Twitter and like 2 people like it.
Right. And there are like, if you're in the luxury of like a city, you have like some more local like meetups or like groups and communities.
Mm.
But even then, they're like kind of scattered. Like they're not commonplace, and there's not like events in the same way that you can like go to events and feel like you see a lot of people who are like you making games.
Totally. I will say I do feel very fortunate in that there is something basically like that in New York City.
Yeah.
There's a pretty solid community here and some opportunities for people to show their games around. But yeah, it's definitely not like that in general or in most places. And the internet is just difficult to navigate in general.
Right, because it can be like too much like, oh, I'm either posting to my group, The Void, or I'm making like somewhere on the cozy game to PS1 horror spectrum and hoping for the best.
No, exactly. And what was also like cute about Indiepocalypse is that I could just send like the link to my mom, and that my mom isn't, she's not like a big games person at all, and I think she doesn't like totally understand why I'm in games.
Right.
But she's super supportive, and when I can like show her something like solid, she was like really excited about it, and I thought that was cute.
Yeah, or really, especially solid, like a physical thing, even.
Yeah, a physical thing, exactly, and like even with the cover of Indiepocalypse, and also that it's like serial, like it's a series. It's just like as you said, you're curating this, and it's cool to like be able to tell anybody like, yeah, I was a part of this like curated group of things.
Right. You can technically you can put them on resumes and stuff like that.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Indiepocalypse, it's on my resume.
Right. It's like you don't need to know. It's like just sits there next to Nike, like so many illustrators. Like, yeah, I did a thing for Nike, which was an ad that was like in the corner of websites for 3 months that maybe nobody saw, but technically somebody paid you to do that.
No, totally. And I mean, at the end of the day, like I still like that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think.
No, I mean, I do this because I like games a lot, obviously. And I often feel that like what is the like my frustration, especially as I come into year 5, I've come to recontextualize my frustration in like a lot of the early years of like why aren't people paying attention to this? It's like if they're not paying attention to this, what are the odds they are individually paying attention to these 10 games? And it's like, well, no, these are all good games. What do you? I couldn't make it. I could have made it easier for you. to I've done all the work for you. And it's like these games I think are very cool. And there's like the range of it, I think a lot about how like if you're just like very pay attention like online game dev or whatever, you're seeing like 5% of what games as a medium are.
No, absolutely.
And like not even like I'm looking just like the 10 in the collection are all like very wildly different from each other. Of just like presentationally and story wise and engine and everything, but also so aside from like one of them, so far from like what you get on Steam.
No, definitely. Like I imagine somebody could come across a post and see one game on it that they think is interesting, but then end up with a bunch of other games they might not necessarily see or be looking for.
Right. And I think that's like the strength of like anthologies or whatever. That's the strength of like, an opening act at a concert. It is like, okay, I didn't know I was here for this, but now I want to.
I'm glad I am.
Right. And it's that kind of like cross promo sort of stuff of like, well, everyone should be like artists should be ostensibly like helping each other where they can at any kind of avenue,
Well said.
And like, and not even like in any kind of rigid way of like, oh, we need to be an LLC or we're a collective or we are like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, here's our group, join our Discord, do all this stuff. Like that's exhausting. Sometimes you can just like someone and not have it be anything.
No, yeah, or just like talking about their work,
right,
passing it along to other people. Yeah,
so much goes for just like saying, oh, have you seen this, or this reminds me of this, or have you heard of this person, and just kind of like spiraling it all out. And that's how the indie space thrives.
No, exactly.
And it is and this what I wanted to mention earlier, or your game Hurry Please was also, it's kind of also, I don't know, would you call it a spiritual sequel to a different like sort of browser toy from earlier.
It's so funny you mentioned that. Yeah, that's so funny. I was actually not sure what to do with that.
Right.
Because that did get, I don't know, it got some interesting comments and like people actually did see that really silly browser toy. But yeah, I took a class at the NYU Game Center a few years ago, and it was a prototype studio. So we had to make a game like every week.
Yeah.
And that week in particular was like really stressful for me. So I ended up just kind of making a browser toy. And like, I think the goal of that was really just to experiment with drawing and with shaders and such. But yeah, I think because the name Hurt Me Please and like the imagery, it got like, I wouldn't say it got like a lot of attention or anything. It just got more than like what I ever usually get or like what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I was just like, that was a kind of an earlier prototype, and I was thinking about the drawing and I was thinking about like how I really liked the vibe of that. So I definitely did kind of like make the spiritual successor that I think would have been what I wanted to make that week.
Right.
If I had time.
And it's interesting, like I like to have often the most recent commissioned game up as like my demo game all the time until I feel the vibe of the show or like what would work best. And it's interesting to see when people like I don't know, encounter art when they're expecting video games.
Totally. Yes, exactly. Yeah, like a lot, like some of the comments there were like, is that it?
Right.
Is this it? And then some people were like, this is really weird and interesting. I'm curious.
Yeah.
But part of me wanted to comment and just be like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, right. That is, I think people are afraid that gamers are incurious when I think they're like, they've got more curiosity and like wider interest. And I think this probably permeates all of pop culture,
Mm-hmm.
Of just like this assumption of audience and curiosity, of like, no, they just want the thing that's familiar to them, until it drives them insane and they have to get something new, and then none of the familiar things start working anymore. Everyone's like, why is that? And
No, totally, totally. And I think also like I think there's always been a part of me that wonders if because I just think about how there's like sequels to everything,
Yeah.
or there's like remakes of everything, and I think like obviously the reason why that exists is that they're like, oh, this is proven to sell. Like all the higher ups are like, this is proven to sell, so it's going to be proven to make like a profit.
Yeah.
I think at the same time it kind of reinforces this idea that people don't want things that are new, like they want things that are familiar, and to an extent it's kind of like this positive feedback loop of
Right.
like we're only giving people what they're familiar with, so they're going to keep seeking that out.
Yeah. Games have such a weird sequel. Like they're more prone to sequels than any medium, besides maybe like genre writing or something. Like your fantasy sci-fi pulps.
No, definitely sequels and so many remakes.
Yeah, like I was thinking about. I was talking to someone about like auteurs and the idea of auteurs, and like, you think of whatever notable game directors or you had to have like a distinct voice. You think of like a Kojima, and like 90% of his game are Metal Gears sequels.
No, exactly.
And like, what if Scorsese's catalog was like Goodfellas 2, Goodfellas 3,
Goodfellas 3.5.
Right. What if all imagine if all film directors operated like that, where all their movies were all sequels, basically, and it'd be like that'd be really weird. And like, wouldn't people want to explore different ideas and different world or a lot of times people tend to explore all the same ideas, but like in different contexts and different worlds and different. But
why do you think it's different in games?
It feels like they're more software-y in a lot of ways,
Oh yeah, like they want to just use the kind of engine that they built.
Yeah, or some. I mean, you could do that to make any game, but sometimes it feels like a game is closer to a copy of Excel than it is like.
I see.
Like a book or something, like a novel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. I wonder if it must. I think that like it comes down, I guess, to the interactivity of like games versus films.
Yeah. Like it is but yeah, I don't know why it's like, oh well, we have to get a sequel to this or a remake. I think the remake problem is that nobody wants to admit that we just need a box that has that runs emulators.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right for that.
That's honest. That's my thing. If Indiepocalypse made me $1 billion, my thing would just be that I would make a box that has emulators on it. And then,
please. But what about all the companies that need to make more money?
They do make money by releasing. They make money by releasing their game to be plugged into the emulators.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess that's fair. Yeah, just the same thing. Yeah, but what about the exclusives?
I don't care about exclusives.
When was the
last time you got exclusive for your Blu-ray player?
Exactly. I think it's the whole like emulator remake thing always comes back down to money.
Yeah. Right.
And they don't want accessible. I mean, it's not stopping people from emulating,
right? For
sure, yeah.
But it always worries me that it stops enough people,
Yeah, no, that's also fair. Which is to say, everybody needs to make Andrew rich so we can get this. Emulator.
I can make Ouya too, but do it right this time. It just like there's strength to being able to go to a store and buy a DVD.
There is strength in that. Wow.
There is like that. Like your grandparents can still go to the Savers and get stuff for their VHS player, and that it just plugs into their VHS still, or whatever. There is like, and it doesn't go away. Like it doesn't go away. Also.
I've actually been playing a lot of games on my 3DS lately.
Yeah.
And also my Game Boy Advance SP. And there's like, oh my gosh, there's just something also just so special about like holding a physical object. I actually also went to a used game store the other day, and it was one of those like hole in the wall places.
Yeah.
And just like, oh my gosh, I'm probably gonna go back. I should have bought something from there.
Right. So you need
But
like
just seeing all the games lined up like on the
Yeah.
shelves.
you need a $500 copy of Albert Odyssey or
No, exact or $200 copy of like Magic Quest, I think it's called.
yeah, you are oh Judah, you are unfortunately 15 years too late to be buying old games. But let me regale you of the times of buying Earthbound for like $50.
Oh man, no, I mean like growing up, there was like this used game store that my dad would bring me to every so often, and if
Yeah.
a game was like under $5, he'd just get it for me.
Yeah.
So I just had like a bunch of those like little, just a ton of like silly little cartridges. I would always buy them, and they'd be like covered in dust and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man, I gotta bring it back.
I have all those PS1 Persona games, and
Wow,
like the PS1 JoJo fighting game. And
that's amazing.
And I'm pretty sure in the course of my old game collecting, the only games I ever paid above retail for were Earthbound and Marvel 2. And I bought Marvel 2 in like a GameStop for like $80. Like somehow they knew it was worth money.
Wow.
And-
Wow.
And now folks, you can get Marvel 2 again and buy it physically if you can, so you always have it on your Nintendo Switch or whatever. But we don't have time to get thinking about Marvel 2. Truly, evidence that video game progression is non-linear. Fighting games, have they ever been better? I'm not sure. What a Mugen ass shit that game is. Like, if people have only ever heard of like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, really just like play it, look at it, and be like, the sprites don't match. It's like imbalanced in a lot of places. It's such a weird thing, but it's cool as hell.
I gotta look this up.
Oh, you can play as surfbots. Anyway, we don't have time to talk about surfbots. Well, because we are approaching the end of our segment, actually, so I've got two important questions for you. The stock standard Indiepocalypse questions. And number one, what's your favorite type of rock?
Oh man, like physical rocks.
Up to interpretation, what that question means.
Oh, mm-hmm.
But it does require an answer.
Kind of rock. Okay, yeah. Oh, this is a tough one. I think like dark red agate.
Okay.
It's really beautiful. Yeah.
And as not a follow up, but a second question that does have an optional component. That is the optional question, which is, do you have a favorite Toho character?
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Pass.
An acceptable answer to that question.
Respectfully pass.
Yes, it's a wide world of Toho.
Really, yeah.
And I always hope that I'm not secretly getting my guests into social hot water when they go, uh-oh, I don't know what Toho is, or this is where I accidentally admit that I don't know any Toho characters.
No, I just it's classified information.
Yes, of course, right. You don't want to upset anyone. Yeah, that is, as someone alludes to in the chat, if you've played Undertale, listen to 30 seconds of a Toho song and you go, oh, I get it. He likes Toho. He likes Toho.
There it is, yeah.
He likes Toho. It's like
Toho Fox.
Toho Fox is like the you feel the instrumentation, like, oh, okay, I get it. This is, when you stumble on a piece of art that, like, you really like an artist, and you stumble on a piece of art that they like, and you're like, oh, I understand this person way more
it's
now.
All coming together.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like, this person definitely like saw this movie or read this book.
Yeah, like me with Persona 5.
Right. Oh, well, what
Basically,
is? Yeah. But before, that's another big thing we can't, no time to get into. Also, I haven't played it, so I don't have to worry about it. Whew, gosh. But
You gotta play it.
RPGs are so long.
They are. Yeah, this one's at least 200 hours. So.
Yeah, I need to play. I haven't played Persona 1 through 2 yet.
Oh yeah.
I have played 3 and 4. Back in the day when I was like, these teens are shooting. Back. Hello, welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was, of course, the Mountain Goats with Corsian Massive Stride. I think I pronounced that incorrectly, probably. But anyway, we are here with our next guest, who you may know from Indiepocalypse, in the context of Indiepocalypse 56, the newest one, fresh off the presses, with a very long titled game, that being wherein she completely cuts herself off from reality, a parabolic emotion from recovery into despair. It's Chimera Royale, or Chimera Royal.
You say it. You can say it faster than me.
Yes, that is. I'm trained. We are.
Wow.
Us Northeasterners are of the fastest speaking of the Americans.
Wow, I'm impressed.
I think so, at least. I think that's like part of our stereotype of style or whatever is talking quickly. And we're like,
I used to be able to talk really quickly when I was younger, and then as I got older, I don't know, my brain got bogged down, and now I like stumble over really basic sentences. But I used to be one of those like super readers where I'd like read out a paragraph. I could read out like a page of a book in like 20 seconds, and then now I'm like, not.
Well, I'm also a shrewd businessman. So we all
CEO, yeah.
we all walk fast and talk fast.
I still walk fast.
Well, we were joking during the break that part of becoming my grift was to become a speaker, but I realized that I couldn't go in that speaker grift because I've actually produced too much stuff. Those speaker grifts in the game industry are for people who have maybe one game credit or one pending game credit. Yes, but they have one game in development yet are somehow giving talks all over the world as if this is all a scam.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing like the organizations and the people who always crop up and they're always saying the same thing.
And it's like, hun, none of you have actually made anything, or
Yeah.
you're in the process of making one thing.
I won't name names, but I do. So I saw a couple companies events they've been to in the UK over the last few years, and then shockingly they ended up being ones who fired massive amounts of people, and I'm always like, I see.
Well, you'll never get that here. The Indiepocalypse promise: no firings here, no layoffs. Also, one employee. So we call that a closure. We call that a closure. My other plan is what we call the Tom Sawyer strategy of what if I fake ended Indiepocalypse to see what my funeral would be like. And then
I saw a Tumblr post literally like earlier today about a TF2 YouTuber who did that.
Right, and then like it's a thing I think about in a morbid way as so much stuff closes and people are like, I will miss such and such thing. It was great, and then also people forget about it after 2 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, what would my outpouring be? One has to often ponder their own death and their passing and memorial.
All the time.
It's an essential part of being human. Speaking of essential parts of being human, making art, and the first question. I can finally ask the question. Kira, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
So I found out about Indiepocalypse before applying. I know that because
one should
found
hope.
out about it around the time there's the Sylvie game, but not the one that was commissioned. It was like the kitten one where it's like you can double jump into spikes, and there's like a teleport. There's like a mechanic where you can like press a button to store a jump and then jump again. And I know I at least knew about Indiepocalypse at that point. I don't remember how I found it at all, but I was like following it for a bit, and then I made a game, and I was like, okay, I can submit my game now.
Yes, well, that does me no good as using this as my marketing. But
yeah.
How am I supposed to get people to? But speaking of that game,
or games plural.
Games. This anthology within an anthology.
Yeah, I thought that. I was hoping you'd find it funny.
Yes, like you have your own little circular launcher as well. If people are unfamiliar with wherein she completely cuts herself off from reality, parabolic emotion from recovery into despair, how would you describe it? And do you shorten it to anything when you're just describing it in person?
Yeah, I always just say parabolic emotion.
Okay.
At first I thought it would be really funny, and then I realized there's a limit on URLs, so I can't put the entire game title in the itch.io.
Oh yes.
At that point, I was just like, well, I need to shorten it anyway.
Right.
I just call it parabolic emotion. I made it for a uni project, so I actually did need to think a lot about how to describe it, so that I could write about it, so I could not fail.
Right.
And basically, I just say it's an anthology of 3 games about alienation, and they're all built using like my very crude interpretation of like formalist poetry, but in game form.
Yes, and that games are a weird form, where sometimes you speak of form, it's like, what is, I don't know, formalist games almost, what is, I often feel like games don't have like a form yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then there's like the other interpretation, which is like a lot of games are nothing but form, and so it kind of becomes hard to conceptualize like what formalism looks like in games, because to a degree it's like games is formalism. But
right.
The point I found to rag on, mostly because there's a lot of existing research into it that kind of links to it, which is great for if you're writing an assignment, is like ludonarrative, like gameplay as or narrative as like mechanics, or mechanics as narrative.
Yeah.
Kind of trying to be like, I'm going to tell a story, but with minimum words. I can't say with no words. There are words in the game, but like, there's no like narrative or dialogue other than what's conveyed through the gameplay.
Right.
And then seeing how people interpret that's been really interesting.
Yeah, because games are, they're sort of probably the most literal of the mediums. I think partially because people are interacting with them.
Yeah.
And poetry is also, I think, if you imagine a spectrum of literal to non-literal, usually there's not a big tiger burning bright necessarily. That's not a real tiger that guy's talking about.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of like, and there's like insular communities in both poetry and games that tend to hate each other, because a lot of like a poet's poet and a gamer's gamer have about as opposing a view of art as you could get.
Right, and then
if you try to sit in the middle, you're like, oh, I want to play with both.
Yeah, there's I think a lot about you're at home Indiepocalypse, where I think of it as 2 games for the art crowd, 2 art for the gamer crowd.
Yeah.
Like
I would imagine a lot of people at Indiepocalypse have had the experience of like you were saying earlier about like, where do you show off a game? You put it on itch, you put it on Twitter, and then you go, well, maybe I'll show it off at some in-person events, and then you go to some in-person events, and you're like, it's not technically impressive enough for like certain crowds. It's not like mechanically fun enough for certain crowds, and then it's also not like artsy and insane and avant-garde enough for like certain crowds, and you're like, well, okay.
Right. So you're in this weird in between period or space of like, something that like rubs up against interactivity that is more like installation. It's like, well, it's not that. It is still more within the medium of games.
Yeah,
but
we're a young medium as well.
Yeah.
So there's not been a lot of exploration, or rather, the exploration hasn't, like, there's a lot of disparate strands of exploration, and everyone's kind of like, you know, reaching out, but there's not been that much like unification of all these different schools, and so you see people like reinvent the same ideas over and over again,
right?
And find each other and go like, "Whoa, we're doing the same thing! That's crazy!" And then they've all done like one thing slightly different.
Yeah, and because so many people, I feel like there was an article recently about brain drain in the industry of like but also I think part of that is because. And I'm biased in that of like there's not a strong hobby space to retreat to in between jobs.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's really like there's like obviously you're not gonna get a super profitable career probably being like a musician or
right
in most cases, but like there are spaces like there was that hyperpop boom, and then there were like spaces for people to just like have fun, and then we've got like a kind of like a second generation of emerging artists out of that space, and they all call each other things other than hyperpop, but like they found each other by being in a hobbyist space, making friends and making stuff together.
Right, and then theoretically maybe you do work gigs, you do small like tours or whatever, but in between that there's like something for you to land that maybe makes you a little bit of money to help out.
Yeah.
But it keeps you like connected to your craft still.
Yeah, but for us, it's like, I mean, Indiepocalypse has been amazing because obviously people on itch aren't big spenders, so I'm not going to be like, I got like this £10,000 or dollar or whatever publishing gig to put my art game out or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've earned more money off of Indiepocalypse than any other way of making money off my game, which is to say I have not made money off my game otherwise.
That's the thing I often say as an
No, it's I guess my like philosophical worry is like we want to see experimentation in the game space, but like you can't make money experimenting.
Right, exactly.
Don't buy it. You can't put it on Steam. You have to pay $100 to put it on Steam.
Right.
No one's gonna buy it, and you're also gonna get a bunch of hate comments.
We want experimentation so that once a year, one of those games that falls into that category can be part of a 10-game list on a website, and go, the gamers are still, or to be. But come here, have you considered that you could be collectively referred to as itch.io by some popular games YouTuber or whatever?
Finally, because when I make anything, when I make like any kind of art, I think my end goal is like I'd really like to be in a top 10 list.
Yes.
Like I really want to be referred to in passing by a YouTuber, so a bunch of people who watch that YouTuber can maybe click on the link in the description and then go, "What is this? I don't really get it."
We'll give it 10. Give it 10 years. We're not quite at the point where any of them are actually mentioning any of the games on itch. They're just referring to itch as a conceptual mono game or whatever.
We get like games coming off of itch and becoming popular, but they're all like. I've been making a devlog for 3 years, and my game just like the hosting service I've used is itch or Game Jolt. Like Friday Night Funkin' is on itch, but like you wouldn't call Friday Night Funkin' is a Newgrounds game through and through, not an itch game.
Right. I mean, you look at that game, that's a Newgrounds ass game. Like
yeah.
that is someone has never left Newgrounds and they made Friday Night Funkin'. And that is the course of game development if just Newgrounds remained king. And
yeah, I mean, interesting stuff. Like then you have like Rhythm Duct as a Newgrounds game, which is really interesting to me because you wouldn't at all classify it in the same place, but it very much like came off Newgrounds and then ended up on itch and now is doing very, very well on Steam. But then Rhythm Duct is like way more playable, you know.
Right. And it is, and there are all these different like sub communities, of how much do people like browse itch,
Yeah. I don't know, like, I like that Itch's algorithm, or rather lack of algorithm, is like nice for kind of even distribution of games. Like, you get recommended a lot of like free play masterpieces on Itch, which
Yeah.
is great. But then, like, you know, it's quite hard to browse for more specific things unless people tag things properly, and then it's like, and now you're just adding like more and more steps onto making
Right.
a game, because it's like you got to tag it, and you've got to, you know, like the experience of releasing a game is that you've got to be like marketer, SEO master, game developer, artist, maybe a musician if you don't want to pay someone, or you don't know anyone who's very, very, very nice, or you don't want to take stuff off Newgrounds. And it's like, we've got so many skills you need just to release an itch.io flop.
Yes, yeah, and it's like exhausting, and I don't want to do it. Also,
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's silly, not silly. It's like, you know, complimenting the host of the thing you're on is like stupid, but
Right.
like, I really do think like the gravitation towards Indiepocalypse for a lot of people is like imagining a world where you're not the only person doing this.
yeah. Well, I will always
here.
I will always deflect any compliments given directly to me on the show. But there is like, for as much as anyone in Indiepocalypse doesn't want to do it, I want to do it. I want to do marketing 1% more than that, basically.
Yeah.
I have never seen a piece of games marketing on TikTok that did not make me wish I was dead.
I do. I have a TikTok account that I do not post on because it's scary, and I kind of don't want to go. Like, I don't even want the 1% chance that I get popular on TikTok.
My general impression of games marketing on TikTok is someone asking the question, "What if I made the most irritating thing in the world?"
Yeah,
and then posted it to advertise my game.
The scariest thing in the world to me is that your thing can go viral on TikTok without you posting it there. Like, I was a fan of Will Wood in like 2017, 2018, and then his stuff got really popular like right around the beginning of the lockdowns on TikTok, and I just saw what that was like from the other side. And I was like, that's so scary. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I would rather live in squalor for my entire life than become popular on TikTok or something like that.
And it's also very kind of meaningless popularity in some ways.
Yeah.
It feels like very ephemeral.
Yeah, I like, and then if you do actually end up staying popular, people will like suddenly start hating you just because you're popular. Like,
seems exhausting. Seems like why do we do any of this?
Yeah, we need more indie zines. We need to just like trade script with each other.
Yeah, that's the goal is that if we just keep trading enough money back and forth, eventually that's the stock market, right? Just people trading money back and forth. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
But they somehow
no, you first.
I was gonna say they somehow make a lot of money.
Yeah. I'm like, we could be like the furry community, you know, where just like someone is putting money in that community from somewhere, and eventually it kind of distributes its way through just by people like commissioning art of each other's persona.
Yeah,
like,
where's my expensive tech angel investor?
Yeah, like one guy who just earns like 500K a year, who's just really into like puzzle platformers, and then just like funds a bunch of puzzle platformers.
Yeah.
And people who make those games like go, okay, now I've got a bunch of money and I'll go fund a game, and one of them can do Indiepocalypse, the rival, like the Shadow the Hedgehog of Indiepocalypse, and then you can feel even more underground.
Yes, that is my eventual fate, is for someone with enough money to do this, and I go, yes, my
I mean,
my niches, but I also have a niche because they'll probably still pick more normal stuff.
Yeah. That's like the whole IO to Donut County of Indiepocalypse is going to be like a guy who just does Indiepocalypse, but only with if you've been doing devlogs on YouTube for 6 months. Like,
I don't want to do devlogs on any websites. This is my I don't even. I've been doing postmortems every year, and this year I don't even want to do one of those. It just seems like why? What's the point? Here's my postmortem.
Yeah.
It still doesn't make money.
It's nice to talk about something you've done like
Yeah.
once, and then you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right. It's like then that becomes a job in and of itself, and it's like who wants to do any of this?
Yeah,
So what got you down this path to make games then?
Oh, I mean, I took like a road because I was like, obviously when I was like really young, I was like, I like Nintendo.
Yes.
Games. I like play Pokemon. How do they make Pokemon? And then I played the classic. I'm a big Nintendo DS fan, which is the most like pithy little thing to say because like yeah, of course you are. It's one of the best-selling consoles of all time. But like, I love like super obscure DS games, and I did even when I was like 9. And I played like Henry Hatsworth and the Puzzling Adventure, and it was like a good game that was visibly horribly cheap.
Do I have a copy of Henry Hatsworth in this room? I might.
Yeah, oh yeah, awesome. And then like years later I discover it's made by like the people who made World of Goo and Little Inferno, and I'm like, yeah, that checks out. But that was the first time I played something that was like a good quality game that was released like professionally, and was like clearly made by like 10 people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you can actually like make games. It's not just like Nintendo's some kind of like, you know, when you're like a kid and you don't really like, you could say anything about the world to a kid and they'd be like, okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, there's a point where you realize people make the things that you like rather than them just being like grown out of the ground.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I went back and forth. I was like, as I got older, I was like, okay, well, you can't just make a game yourself. And then I got a bit older and I was like, well, maybe you can. And then I was like, for a while, I was like, I did music at college instead of games. And then I went back to games for uni. And then I was like, maybe I could work as a programmer and make indie games on the side. And then I got a job as a programmer for a year and hated it. And so now I'm here.
Yeah, I don't think I could get a job. It seems like a bad industry to get a job in, the games industry.
And I got a job outside of tech.
Yeah.
Outside of games, but like doing like graphics programming and tech, and I mean, you know, if it works for you.
Feels like
worked for me.
The dream, if you can get it, is like IT at a local company or something.
Yeah. It seems like a good gig. Like a well-paying IT job that doesn't treat you poorly. Right.
That's not IT, but that's functionally what I have. It's just reliable job at a local company. That's it.
Yeah. Not needing to commute for an hour every day.
Yeah, it's just a 20-minute commute. It's not bad. Oh. But you know, I'm used to that. It's a shorter commute than my college was.
Oh my god, yeah.
I
stopped taking the bus to uni to save money due to the economy, and so I just started cycling. So it did turn my commute every day into like 40 minutes of cycling. But if I
wanted to take the bus, I would need to, I think, walk at least 20 minutes to just get to a bus stop.
Oh.
And
then you have to pay money for it.
There was a time when I had to drive my car to the shop to get repaired. I missed the bus at the supermarket, and it was faster for me to walk 3 hours home than to wait for the bus wait for the next bus.
I love a classic like hourly bus schedule. It's really
yes. Cool. No, it was like this bus stops here twice a day or whatever.
Yeah. That was part of why I didn't like my job, was that there was like one bus in the morning at 6 a.m. and then I'd just get to the office like an hour and a half early. Yeah, no, I like sleeping in.
I think it's easy to forget or to miss the part of, you know, Americans and our cars is that we need most of us actually really desperately need them to get anywhere. Yeah. It's a very big country.
England is like way better for public transport and still horrible.
Yes. Yeah.
I was in Poland last week, and I was just like, the number one thing in Poznan was just like, oh my god, imagine living in a city with transport that's this good.
Yeah,
buses and trams all the time. It's crazy.
I did an event in a museum in a slightly larger city, and I'm used to like, okay, when I travel for events, I pretty much take public transit.
Yeah.
Nope, buses didn't even run on a Sunday when I left.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I went to Austin. Austin has like no public transit.
Yeah.
Or like no reliable public transit for that I could use. Yeah, I had to get driven everywhere.
Mm.
And it was like...
It's like either cooling in favors or spending so much money.
Yes, and my answer is spending money. And it's like, well, I guess I'm going to spend money on these cars, these Ubers, or these Lyfts. Because I don't want to rent a car either. Because it's like...
Yeah.
Would cost just as much money, and then I would just have to be driving, and I have to learn how to drive places.
Driving a car's scary to me. I don't want to learn to drive.
Oh, it's. Don't tell anyone. It's truly freeing. There's the true pleasure of the open road. It's. There's. I think it is for some people and not for some people. Once I get started, I could probably drive forever. I become one with the car, and it's the
I can imagine just enjoying driving on a quiet highway.
Yeah.
Or something. But the idea of then you get from the place you get off the highway and then you're in an actual like city and then you have to deal with like domestic drivers of that city or whatever, and then it's suddenly like I'm way more aware that I'd just be driving a big metal box.
Why? That is right. It is one of those fun things to do, to disassociate yourself for a moment and like recognize that you are driving a big metal box and that you are not one with car.
Yeah.
But it is. Speaking of driving and other sorts of things. Also, cars. Oh, the last thing I need to say, the important thing of like all those, the importance of all those various hyphen punk bands about getting out of this town. You'd have to use those cars. That's what we need the cars for.
Yeah. We wouldn't have like folk punk if you couldn't get all of your friends into a really beat up van and then drive as far away as you can.
Yes, like when you have your one friend in high school who can get a car or has a car to borrow.
There's a Days and Days music video I really like because the song is entirely about being a loner and hating other people, but the music video is just them hanging out in a van and being friends. Really funny.
If you don't have a friend that can drive you to like Walmart or your UK equivalent at like midnight because you're like guys, there's one that's open 24 hours. Let's go there at 2 a.m. And then what's the point of living life, you know?
I do love a classic like 2 a.m. adventure where someone just calls you up the evening of, like, do you want to go to like an abandoned like police station I found? And you're like, no, but I'll come because it sounds fun. Yeah.
Okay, urban exploring is a whole other thing. But Kamara, you've had a segment to prepare for these two questions. Question 1, what's your favorite type of rock?
So I really like emo, but there's a lot of different like subtypes of emo.
Yes.
But like, you know, like scram and like classic like emotional hardcore and pop punk and all the things in between, like Midwest emo, and I really like can't pick between them. But I've been enjoying a lot of like more classic, like slow-paced emo recently.
Let me see how they classify themselves. I played a longer one of an album that I like during the pre-show. What is? Let's see. They classify themselves as, what is this? Yeah, emo pop. I played Kara's Walk Home earlier.
I mean, people like emo fans make fun of like emo that's basically just pop punk, but like if you listen to King for a Day and you don't like it, I don't know, it's a good song. It doesn't matter that it's on the charts. Like if you don't hear like the beginning of like King for the Day and immediately want to sing along, that's fine. You're allowed to.
There's a wide world of emotional rock music.
Yeah.
You could listen to all sorts of stuff and
if you played it out of speaker and like teenagers would bark at you, I think you can call it emo. Yeah,
I was at work and it's funny to see as people get older because they were playing like mid-aughts like I was at work and these like I work with like, you know, guys, you know,
Yeah.
Just some of the, and I'm pretty sure, and I heard the telltale tunes of the Black Parade coming from the shop floor, which is like, growing up, my impression is that you would not hear that from a shop floor, but it's like,
no, they do just play that, like, I'll be like at Tesco's or Asda, and they'll be playing like Orts classics, and then they'll just be playing like a My Chemical Romance or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this suitable for an Asda at like 8 p.m.?
and yeah, no, that's me in a supermarket, and they're playing like the Replacements, and I was like, what's going on anymore? But a follow-up question: do you have a favorite Toho character?
Yeah, I like Toyo Satomi Mi no Miko because I like her theme song, and it's cool that she's like the one trans Toho character.
Well, you were prepared.
Yeah, no, I already knew the one, but I typed in the name of her theme so I could get her wiki page up so I could say the name.
What is it? What do you know? You know her theme off the top of your head?
It's True Administrator.
Let's see how long it is. Because someone in this call may have the entire Toho library on their computer.
Oh my god.
And
I'm really bad at like Toho games. I've like tried to play a few, but I always get up to like 3 stages. But like, you know, I listen to Toho music.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I wonder who this theme is for.
Did you say True Administrator?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't see it. Let me see if it goes by a different.
It might.
Or like there's like a lead-in word. And,
yeah, it's called True Administrator.
okay, it's on 13. It looks like though. So let me see. We will not spend all day trying to find this, but I will look. Oh, okay, yes, it looks like it does have a stage 6, okay. I don't see it on here. Do I not? Maybe it did not. Weird, because I thought this was like a mostly like complete. Oh wait, never mind. It keeps going.
Oh my God.
Yes, it is. Okay, sorry. It's 6 minutes long.
Yeah.
Too long for a break.
But
But
well,
maybe
if you're listening and you want to have your own DIY break,
yes.
kind of listen to True Administrator.
And I can put it in the pre-show of next. I'll remember to put in the pre-show of next week. I will put it in my intro thing right now, so I will definitely because it's Shotoku Legend, True Administrator.
Well,
Well, we're going on break. Thank you for joining me here today.
thank you very much for having me, and I'll speak to you after the next segment.
Yes, exactly. In about 2 minutes and 36, we'll be back with our final guest. Goodbye for now. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was June with Staking Your Life on a Prank from the aforementioned Toho. You can just get those whole libraries. They're cool things. We are here with our. I say you can get in the way you can kind of get everything, online. I don't know if you can actually truly get those in the same way as one might be able to, for instance, go to quote-unquote-records.com and download their entire discography as a donation encouraged style, which I highly encourage. You also send them money, and also highly encourage you to get that whole discography because it rules hard if you like punk and or ska punk music. They've got a lot of it there. And other stuff.
It can be on your computer somehow.
Yes, if you're like, I need Jeff Rosenstock in 7 different bands across 30 different albums on my computer right now, they've got you covered. But that voice you heard is our next and final guest on the show, and not related to Indiepocalypse, but also people really fucking stretching my voice with these long ass titles. With the upcoming remake of the end of the greatest RPG of all time, it's Lucas Emmanuel. Lucas, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, and yes, this is intentional to spite you that I've made it a long title.
I am prepared for long titles. I crave long titles. I can repeat. Sometimes I will subject friends to just me reading long monologues, and as people I want to do, and read the Bard, of course, just to their friends, because you reference, wasn't that thing in Macbeth cool? And they're like, and they go, well, of course, let me read it all to you very quickly.
This is the sole reason I acquire friends, is to force them to listen to me do things.
yes, of like, do I remember the full end of The Stranger? Sometimes. Can I? I'm not going to repeat it here, mostly because it's in that Titus Andronicus song. But first question, gotta know, Lucas, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
So I have a friend who, during the Bundle for Racial Justice on itch.io, made a curation of the various games that were in there, kind of giving recommendations for people, and put together this whole compilation. And they sent me, because I had just released a game on itch.io, the Indiepocalypse issue that was included in that bundle. They sent it to me, like, hey, you should submit to this, and I did, and then it didn't make it in. So
that happens sometimes. There are what's the word I'm looking for? There are plenty of guests who just and I make sure to send a thing to people to say, there's not enough space to fit every game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's all.
Anyway, I've nursed a grudge since then, and I'm back for my revenge and all that.
Yes, it's important. It's important to keep. Do you remember what game it was?
Oh, it was, what would it have been? I think it was the one I made called A Life's Filmography, where it was like a kid watching a bunch of TV shows, which honestly I thought was very unlikely to get in because it contained so much copyrighted content.
Yes,
that I was
okay.
ignoring.
Yes, I know. I 100% remember this game, and that was a important part of it, I think, where there are points Indiepocalypse includes a high amount of what is known within the New York scene, I think, as plundercore. And I embrace it given takes, but there was so much, and it skirted around of commercial, and I was like, you know what, too much of that. Yeah, 26. That was so long ago.
Yes.
But yes,
I had low hopes for getting something in there that included clips of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. So,
yes, right. That it fell under my not sufficiently altered category. I say, with a game that blasts, my heart will go on, but it screws it up. It twists and screws it, as they say.
Exactly.
But yes, okay, yeah. So you truly, that's over half a lifetime ago in Indiepocalypse terms. So what have you been up to since then?
So I have been up to a lot of things. I've been making games consistently. The thing that I'm currently working on, which you mentioned, is the remake of the end of the greatest RPG of all time, which is an absolutely ridiculous game, to the point that I have to clarify that this interview we're about to do is not canon to the story of the game.
Okay, yes.
Because I am a character in the game, and a bunch of other people I know in real life are characters in the game. But basically the idea is that you play through this soulless remake of the last hour of a non-existent 90s JRPG, and you have to work backwards from the bonus features to figure out how it works.
Okay,
and
yes.
It gets really weird from there.
Yes, no, I'm glad you went with the HD 2D style. That is just apparently the default style for remakes nowadays.
Absolutely. Turn the bloom slider to maximum and you're
Yes.
set.
Yeah. No. I was worried in some of these screenshots that you may have broken your bloom slider. You may have cranked it too hard.
Yeah, I don't know if Unity's going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, that's like, but it is like that. That's the thing that actually sticks out to me the most. And it's good that you mentioned is like the bloom and like all the light bloom and all these things more than just like the kind of, because I understand the inclination for HD 2D, you know. But it's the lighting that throws me off with all these things the most.
Absolutely. It's so bizarre the amount of post processing they put into those Square Enix games. I'm like, I really can't see what's happening anymore.
Right. Right, because also they have like huge like sparks coming off of things, and you know,
Yes.
the SNES looks pretty good still. I don't know if people looked at a Super Nintendo game lately, but a lot of those games look pretty good.
Well, yeah, one of the things I did while I was like writing this game is I started. There was a bunch of classic JRPGs that I'd never played.
Yeah.
And I just spoiled myself on them by just playing the last hour of them.
Oh, okay. So now, important question: how do you get to just the last hour?
I have a good friend Michael who actually he's working on the game as well as our UI program. We've got a very small. It's like 4 people, but that's bigger than a lot of Indiepocalypse games.
Yeah, but that's like, what do you get out of here, you big league kids? But that's also
exactly
why. Yeah, that is outside the scale of one person.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, so he has like a save file for every game I've ever seen that is in the genre of JRPG. So I was just like, hey, Michael, do you have a save file for this game? And he said yes, and then just sent it over. So I played the end of Dragon Quest III. I played the end of Final Fantasy VII. There were so many of these foundational games that I had not played.
But you at least got to see Cloud say "Let's mosey." So I think you're probably good.
I got the gist.
You didn't get the nuance of how his character got to the point where he could say "Let's mosey," but you got there. You got to see it. That's the only thing I want out of this remake project is I want Cloud to still say "Let's mosey." I think it'd be fun.
It better be preserved.
That's a weirder remake because it's kind of like its own thing, kind of.
Yeah.
It is. It's
diverging and making one game into 3 games is certainly a choice that is interesting enough that I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, right. Whether it all shakes out in the end, I don't know. Whether it'll be like a TV show where it's like, I think of long games in terms of TV shows a lot more nowadays. Of like, sometimes like, oh, the overall wasn't great, but like the individuals were like, the parts are great, even if the sum isn't the best thing.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you can get acquainted through a game on a level of a TV show character more so than you do a movie character, where it's like, if I wanted to, I could go write an episode of Frasier right now, just because I've seen so many episodes of that show. I'm like, I know all the characters' voices. Right.
You know their beats, you know all their games, you know what they do. There's like a rhythm to them all. Yeah. So now, did you like? So I assume you like in playing this approach, you like land on like archetypes and like stylistics of like how much convergence did you see in all these hours that you played?
There are definitely tropes. We tried to like when I was I say we. I feel like it's a weird instinct. It's me, Lucas Emmanuel. I was just sitting there doing this.
Right. Your aforementioned friend got you to the other 59 hours.
Yes. Michael was very helpful doing that, and then I was just at the very end. But yeah, playing through, there's definitely some commonalities where you start to realize like, okay, so everybody does really just put the budget into the final boss here. There's always like a really long lead up to the end, and the thing that I thought was especially fun about doing just the end of an RPG is the mechanics are just nonsense if you haven't played the
Right.
first 99 hours.
Yeah.
Because they introduce you to them slowly, but now you're just like, oh yeah, there's 40 menus here, and they all do completely different things. Final Fantasy VII was the hardest one to get through because I'm like, I
Right.
have no idea what's happening.
Yes, especially like depending on what their character loadouts are. If they have like an all skill and you have every one of those yellow action skills, and you're like, what does D blow do?
Exactly.
What is 4x cut? What is morph? Why did that guy just spin around in a circle and turn into a X potion? Yeah, no, because at a point it's more like a puzzle game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. That's legitimately the way I've described the game I'm making to people. It's like it's an RPG, but it's not really an RPG. It's basically a puzzle game.
Yeah, right. It's a puzzle game that builds on understanding of RPGs.
Absolutely. But it definitely, there's an element of like, not started making games. Like, I legitimately had not played video games until, like, 5 years ago. And then I got gifted a Nintendo Switch, and I played Mario Odyssey, and then I was able to mainline like 30 years of games history in like a month or two, which was great. But it does mean that like everything around me is like fresh in my mind. There's no like temporal distance between a game that came out in the 90s and the game that came out like a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's weird to see how it evolves.
Yeah, that's actually a thing I feel like I've been experiencing more, like as I like go to events and as younger people come up. It's like having people who don't grow up with this context of like don't see this evolution of games. Like they all kind of get fit into like one category. Like some of these games, like they look older, but they're like, especially as more games trade on that style, like. When did this game come out? Did it come out 20 years ago? Did it come out 2 years ago? Like retro in a weird way is like, I hope is slowly dying in games. The idea of retro, because I feel like it does a disservice to any media. Like retro doesn't exist in other mediums the same way,
Yeah.
We don't think of like older music necessarily as like retro music.
And you certainly don't need to go buy an old DVD player to watch a movie that's older than 5 years old.
Right. It's available everywhere. I mean, luckily the Switch library does a good job of, I guess, of making a lot of those games easily accessible in that streaming style. If you want to play like Clue Land or something. Or some other piece of trash. Cool.
I remember when they announced the NES library. I don't know, because I had played Smash Bros. And I was like, I really liked the Ice Climber characters, so I was so excited to go and play Ice Climbers.
Yes.
And I was like, this is not a modern game.
No, you climb up the ice and then you get an eggplant. And then you keep on climbing. Yeah, I think that's like a cool thing though that people can experience. Of the missing like the context of like, well, what is right? Imagine someone like, I love Smash Ultimate growing up. I'm a big Smash fan. I'm gonna go on and play every Smash game. And you're like, I'm gonna play Game & Watch games. I'm going to play Fire Emblem. I guess Fire Emblem is less mysterious than it was when you were playing Smash on SD4 and you're like, who is Marth? And like
the internet spoils a bit of that.
Yeah, it would be years. Also, Fire Emblem is super popular now, and Smash has like 8 Fire Emblem characters.
Yes. If you're somehow missing what that little sword means, then you have not been paying attention.
Yes, right. Now it is now almost the Fire Emblem, Super Emblem Brothers or whatever. And there's a Sephiroth guy in there. Speaking of Final Fantasy VII, it's a weird thing. You learned all about that guy. He's like, what's his deal? And there's an interesting to like creating a bunch of characters, like having assumed that you know that they do have a backstory. Like how do you, to reference earlier, how do you write a Frasier episode? How do you? It's kind of like writing the Frasier finale if Frasier doesn't exist. So you have to, in your own head, make up Frasier.
Yeah, it's the weird thing as well with like the compressed timeline of video games and all of that, where it's like, going back to Ice Climbers, it's like if, I don't know, you had Battleship Potemkin in a crossover with Iron Man. It's a bizarre, like, this is we figured out how to make games in this modern sense, and then we also have Link here.
Yes.
Who's like got modern remakes that are available this year.
Right. And I can't wait for HD Ice Climbers to come out.
It'll be great.
Where's Nintendo's version of Ice Climbers that's just getting over with the hammers? Nintendo,
point, yeah.
you're leaving money on the table. There's the one with the change, which I think is also just the same thing, basically. Yes. The genre of climbing up and hoping you don't fall down.
Just spam a bunch of Unreal Engine models off the store and put them in a slightly higher position.
Yes. And then just make them jump around. Seems pointless. Like, originality seems like a thing, a pointless approach when you could simply just jam out the most profitable thing as quickly as you can.
Yeah, that's fair. Problem is everyone else is also doing that, so
I know, because
you don't see all the other people who.
Right. You see, oh look, Vampire Survivor likes do well. You say, not seeing the other 10,000 that sold 2 copies.
Exactly. A million indie developers said in unison.
Yes. And then I think, like, and that's the silliness of, like, I think where, like, quote unquote Indiepocalypse comes from, of being like, oh, my thing didn't do well, it must be an Indiepocalypse, when it's more like, well, no, like, you and 3,000 other people all made the same game.
There isn't an Indiepocalypse. That already happened. We're living in the wasteland.
Yes.
It's always been dog eat dog.
Yeah.
Riding around our Mad Max trucks.
Right, and the secret I say often it is, like, before video games were invented, there was already too much art. Like, don't tell anyone about the written word. They'll be scared to learn how many books there are. And that's just books. Let's not count novels and plays.
Absolutely.
But that is the difficulties of, like, art and all, and it kind of doesn't, like, it's the difficulty of doing that, but also, like, oh, I need money today, so I can't hope that my game will be cult hit or something, or will catch on slowly. As people, as there's the kind of the dependency of, well, we're a company and we have to close if this thing doesn't sell well, or,
And there's like, there's an approach and like a vibe outside of things like Indiepocalypse, which is what I enjoy about them so much, is like when you go outside of this space, the assumption, even if you're a hobbyist, is that your goal is to not be a hobbyist, and that your goal is to, like, make a mega hit, and it kind of orients everyone in this weird way towards, like, well, obviously a game that doesn't sell X number of copies more than you spent on it is inherently a failure.
Right, but no, if when I file my taxes, Uncle Sam asks how much money I made on my hobbies. Like, even the U.S. government legitimizes hobbyist creation. Or at least wants you to pay money for it.
Absolutely.
And
last March, I live like less than an hour away from where GDC happens, so
yeah.
I convinced, because I have a professor. I don't study games, but I go to a university that has a games program, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, you can borrow my pass." And I just walk up to people like, "Yes, I am Professor Lemieux. Now let me into this talk."
Yeah,
but it was so funny.
The ideal way to go to GDC. The ideal way to go to GDC is not paying for it.
Absolutely. Get somebody else to buy your way there, or get somebody else to buy someone else's way there, and
Right.
then give that to you.
Really, I think that's the only way anyone should attend. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that is a thing where it's like there's too much the necessity to be a company and to like make a ton of money, and like because that also, as we mentioned in like the last segment, it leaves very little room for like not that ultra success of like,
Yeah.
oh, our thing didn't sell super well, I guess we don't make games anymore.
And I feel like there's got to be a middle ground
Right.
that you want to reach, where it's like, you don't need to be the greatest success in the world, but also like, please, for the love of all that is holy, pay people to make art.
Right.
My goodness.
Yeah, like there's like exactly, there is like, well, I don't, game dev doesn't pay for my next 5-year development cycle, but I can go to like local events and make a couple $100 selling my game and that kind of thing, and like go around and travel, and it pays for the trips and then some, and that leads
Absolutely.
to ideally more people buying it online, and just kind of like that in between space that is like less feast or famine, which feels like kind of defines game development. It's either you're a hobbyist that makes no money, or you are successful.
You start getting brochures from the yacht club.
Right. Are they still at that? Oh no, I was thinking of the other one. There was that. I was thinking of NFTs for a moment.
Oh yeah, there's not very many good associations with yacht club, except for the one people who made that one indie game. Other than that,
Yes, he's that guy that's in all the other video games, right? That's the guy.
yeah. Who could say what he's called?
He just kind of shows up all the time. He's got a great agent. He keeps showing up in all these other games. I love how much work he gets. He gets so much work, so many appearance fees. But speaking of appearance fees, nope. Wait a minute. I was gonna say there's no appearance fees for this show because I don't make any money on it. I think
Darn, my invoice isn't going to go through.
No. I think this show has made $50 so far. I've gotten one payout from Twitch.
Pretty incredible.
I know. I'm in the top. I think that by default puts me in like the top 50% of Twitch streamers.
I still have $2 in itch.io that I can't cash out until somebody else gives me 3 more.
Oh, that is a curse. But
Indeed, every time I go to the dashboard, I see it sitting there.
Good to know Itch and I operate on the same $5 payout philosophy. But hey, it works. So you don't get dinged by $80 million in fees.
Very true.
It all pays out in the end. But that said, judging by my timer, Lucas, we're in the last hour of the show, or the last form of the segment. So I've got 2 puzzles for you. I hope you've been paying attention.
Yes, I've picked up.
What's your favorite type of rock?
I'm gonna do the mysterious third option and say one that doesn't make any sense, but Rocky Road ice cream.
That's permissible. Allow it. That question, there is no wrong answers for the first question. The second question has a lot of wrong answers. And that is, do you have a favorite Toho character?
So I was frantically texting earlier during this call. So I've gotten a friend who does know a little bit about Toho to give me an answer.
Yes.
So I can officially state, for the record, that my favorite Toho character is Sans Undertale.
Nope, not allowed. Not within the Toho family. I think tries to hang out with Toho, is friends with Toho, but is not technically a Toho. I am sorry. That is one of those wrong answers.
Is my segment going to be deleted now?
No,
that just
it is not. That would be too much work for me. That's not going to happen.
Good point.
The only work I do on editing this show is cutting out the music that I play. Because
I guess you got to do that.
I do technically have to do that, especially since I put it on YouTube now. Well, I guess technically I could just put it on YouTube and YouTube would yell at me and then I'd say, yeah, okay, sorry YouTube, please mute those segments for me. I could do that instead of editing it myself. But
think of all the time you could save.
I think technically I don't know if any podcast things might catch it and get mad at me. And if they do, I don't want to take that chance.
Smart.
But Lucas, thank you for joining me here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for giving me a weird blast from the past of like, I say blast from the past of like Indiepocalypse 26, which is not even like, only 2 years into its existence, which it was now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
right now, which has now been like half a lifetime ago for it. But it helps all those people at Indiepocalypse Land. I do remember pretty much most of these games that I play. And sometimes that's also why I do try to do the wait list more often to remind people of like no please, because I've had some people who like deleted their thing, or removed themselves from the jam, and I'm like, I wanted to include this game, and then unfindable. But we are going on a break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes and 22 seconds, approximately. We are coming back. Hello, welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Julian Baker's sprained ankle to take it down into the group segment. I think that's maybe the one kind of I saw it before it was cool show I ever went to. I think was like Julian Baker in like, once again, I think it was in Cambridge in like Berkeley, and like the Red Room in Berkeley in the middle of a blizzard. Like it was like a cafe show, and now whatever. Boy Genius is popular. I think people like Boy Genius, right?
Yeah. Boy Genius.
Yeah.
I hear that thing's kind of. I hear that band is kind of popular.
Just a bit.
With a bunch of, whatever, very popular people in it, a trio of popular musicians. But speaking of speaking of popular trios, we've got a trio right here.
Oh,
Whoa.
you.
Oh, welcome back, everyone. Our own little boy genius.
That's the kind of thing that your grandparents say to you.
Yes.
Oh, exactly.
Oh, you and your friends are like a little boy genius. Which one of you is the Phoebe Bridgers? Which one of you is the Julian Baker? And which one of you is the third one that I'm not buying time to remember the name of? Lucy Dawkins, of course. A name that I 100% knew off the top of my head.
Oh yeah.
No googling at all.
No googling at all.
Absolutely not.
It wasn't at all that I'm an early Julian Baker adopter and Phoebe Bridgers broke that guitar that everyone got mad about. Maybe I can't.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, that was such a nothing. That was such a everyone on Twitter acted like that was the biggest thing in the world, and I never saw it again after 2 days.
That was my favorite thing because it reminded me, wow, people are very uncool. People look at the most people were given the opportunity to go, wow, I'm the uncoolest person in the world. I get angry when rock musicians break their guitars.
Yeah, it's an important guitar, and it's that's the point,
If you look up Phoebe Bridgers guitar smash,
yeah,
there's a headline on Rolling Stone that says, "Yes, it's okay for women to smash guitars."
Yes, it's that was when there were these moments when I think people spend too much time online, and that was one of them. They have lost touch with what life is and the pleasures of life.
Guitar is like a Mickey Mouse to them.
They say with us, people have never seen the cover of London Calling. It's born. Didn't she actually even do that? I try to remember. I feel like she even like struck that almost like similar pose. I don't remember. But anyway, we don't support if we don't support Guitar Smash. We respect instruments here on Indiepocalypse Radio.
Yeah, and women.
If you ever come across a really like famous guitar, you should definitely not smash it.
Oh, I'm smashing every famous guitar I ever see.
Which happens all the time. It's actually kind of shocking how many famous guitars there are, because I keep smashing them.
Yes, right. Well,
the famous guitar economy dwindling.
Finally, the fourth G added after so much time. Gaslight, Gatekeep, Girl Boss, Guitar Smash.
Guitar Smash.
We've been wondering what it would be for so long. It's been getting stale.
New G dropped.
Yes.
On Indiepocalypse Radio.
All girl bosses, please. All 30 under 30 girl bosses, please take notice.
a very misled conspiracy theorist goes to a punk show and wears a tinfoil hat the entire time.
Yes.
Orgy.
In between underpaying employees and ruining their lives. Remember to smash guitars or whatever.
The new rock anthem is just going to be made on one of those Smash guitars reforged like an ancient sword in like the fire.
Oh wow! And now I'm inspired to make a game about guitar smashing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the indie game scene needs, is more like ancient reforged swords. Like, you know, maybe if we buy a bunch of Nintendo Switch games and smash them and then forge them under the heats of a volcano.
I have been saying that like not enough indie devs are like making deals with the Fae, you know.
Mm-hmm. We need more Fae deals.
Walking to the forest and accidentally revealing your true name, that sort of thing. But getting spirited away. We've lost our maybe it's too much city based. You need to live out in the country to truly experience that, you know. To have like
the most common Fae deal with indie devs is you have to suddenly make a cozy farming game. That's the recompense.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Although I am curious to know what like a city Fae would look like a rat.
Yeah,
it's
a grimy little trash creature.
If you see a circle of like pizzas on the floor, pizza slices,
three circles, yeah.
You're right, all pointing inwards, and then you emerge through as a rat, and you're like, wait a minute.
Wow. There have been many times, actually. I've been starting to see it as like a sign of good luck that like a rat will come and like kiss my shoe. Like it'll just press its nose on my shoe and I'm not looking, and then I'll look down and scream.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's happened to me at least 3 times since I moved to New York. Like I'm sitting like waiting for the subway, and like a little rat will like tap dance out from underneath where I'm sitting.
And he's just.
Have you considered becoming the Rat Lord?
Slowly but surely.
It's like, once rent turns back on, you're like. Well, off to the sewers with me.
Wow, you're so right. I have a plan B.
Yeah, they're trying to help you out. They're being like, hey, we got a deal for you. They are.
I mean, if you ever want to make a cozy roguelike crafting game, you do have an entire swarm of rats to work as your employees now.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
And you don't have to pay them.
No.
Oh no, I'll pay them. You know, we're all in this class struggle together.
Right. It's a co-op.
Yes. You know, the economy is good when you're like, me and a subway rat are about the same class.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like I got a whole boatload of trash for them. You know, be an equitable relationship.
And then you, of course, you know, slowly realize they're like, oh, they're all joining their tails together. Are these rats trying to unionize against me? And you're like, I thought I was a good boss. Why are you trying to? Aren't I a kind and equitable boss? Why do you need to make a union? I don't know. Yeah, there's Rat Kings. Rats are not represented enough in video games, and also I guess like not like. I think this like with frogs a lot because they make a lot of frog games. But I feel like they're like frog erasure. I think frog is supposed to look a little weird.
Yeah, they're all too cute now.
Yeah.
I appreciate.
Exactly.
I've always appreciated Yu-Gi-Oh for having some just like disgusting looking animals in it, but like
thank you. Yeah.
some of their older frogs are a lot grosser, and then they kind of get cuter over time. Which
No,
is a shame.
They're like more animals. We need to respect that they're weird little guys. You know.
We need more gross things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Accurate representation, please.
Folks, representation matters. We need a rat to look at a TV and be like, yes, I see myself. not this Hollywood beauty standard of what they think rats look like.
I do think a rat king really is like the Hollywood beauty standard of rats. Like, it's like Quicksand, where I feel like TV really over prepared me for encountering rat kings in real life.
Yeah.
And I feel like it must go tenfold for a rat, you know?
Turns out there's not really any of them.
Yeah.
There's
so many rats that we're pressuring to like link tails with other rats, and they're just not getting stuck together and then kind of flailing around tragically.
I know, but we just sometimes need to like respect that they need to live independently, have their little nests. We just, folks, stop trying to make your rats into a rat king.
We need to support the indie rat community.
Yes,
exactly.
I think that's sometimes the idea of like, I'm going to make my cat a vegan. I'm like,
God.
You know they're like carnivores. like it's the weird like, of like, listen, they're just going to live their lives. I can't impose my morality onto an animal.
Yeah.
No, totally. And animals don't really get, they're kind of like, you know, enslaved to the capitalist system. They don't get to choose to go and undomesticate themselves.
Yeah. And listen, those cats are not out there factory farming those chipmunks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They
need to have a cat rumspriga where they get to go out into the feral world and find out what it's like.
That's warrior cats.
I was literally just about to say that. Wow, yeah.
So that's how I get all of
connect with their roots.
That's not just like vaguely. That's textually the plot of warrior cats.
That's how we get all of our cats. They just kind of wander over and it's like, I guess we live here now.
Classic. They do like doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, I don't have to hunt for my food. Great.
That's rules. I can just I have long thought that the best term for the idle rich is fat cat, because there is no there's no creature on earth that experiences a life of luxury better than a fat cat.
There's the classic story of Six Dinner Sid. I don't know if that's
no, unfamiliar.
Anyone outside of England?
Not a clue.
I don't even know if it's popular. I won't lie, but it's a kid's book about a cat who lives on a street where everyone loves him, but everyone thinks he's like a stray. So they all feed him every day. So he gets like a lunch from every single person on the street, and it's all like the different type of people, what lunches they give him, and how they all live differently. And then they all find out that he's been tricking them. But also it's like the kind of like the kayfabe of a children's book where you can understand that a cat can trick someone.
You're right.
Because in real life, if that happens, it's like, you know, you've just been feeding a random cat.
Yes.
It's not tricking you, it's just a cat.
Most animals don't have the concept of subterfuge. Like they don't.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, they just like, it's not a concept they understand. Like,
I think maybe sometimes, because cats can be a little. I mean, I wouldn't say, you know, a stray cat would be like that, but I think like indoor cats can be exceptionally manipulative, but like in the cutest way. Like I love it. Like please manipulate me. You're adorable.
Well, that's just.
Well, there's that story of the U.S. government during the Cold War trying to put like microphones in cats to spy on Russians.
Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah.
And then they just found out that the cats would just wander off.
All right,
They're like, I have no stake in this conflict.
Right. The cats did not invent nations. They have no nations. They have no allegiances. Another thing that we made up to create trouble for ourselves. If only we hadn't built that giant tower, you know? We screwed it up. Screwed it up big time when we did that. We've always peeked too close to God. But we mentioned Mario a couple times earlier, and I think about this question comes up occasionally. I like to think about what is your relationship? I asked the group to Mario. That.
Okay, I have to say, the first thing that came to mind was this straight up happened last night. I was going to the grocery store with my partner, and I kid you not, there was this person blasting music and like driving around in like one of those oversized go-karts.
Yes.
And it had like the little flag at the back, like in Mario Kart, like on his cart, and he was wearing a straight up Mario costume. Like blasting music, like lights flickering all along the sides of the cart. And as I walked by, I was like, I mean, obviously I took a video, but as I was taking the video, like I couldn't see where the eye holes on the mask were. And this guy just turns his head ever so slowly and stares directly at me. Or I guess Mario stared directly at me as I was taking this video. But it was like so unnerving how slowly it happened.
That is the weird thing of like you must experience more often living like in a city of like, oh, I am in the middle of influencer content.
Yeah, you have to wonder, is that someone who's really whimsical, or is that someone doing like
doing a bit for money? I was wondering that because I was like the first thing I thought is like, wow, how rich is that person?
Right.
Yeah.
It's either like, because it could be someone just being really, really funny, or it could be someone doing an influence bit, or it could be like a like a comedy sketch type of thing. Like,
yeah, you never know in New York. And I'm wondering, like, there's a part of me that really hopes that this was somebody who just like saved up their paychecks from like the last 5 years to pull this stunt, and they didn't record it, and there's no like they were just doing it like for the bit. I'm praying nobody does anything for the bit anymore.
No.
Yeah, for self care, you've just got to do one funny thing and not put it on camera.
Yeah,
exactly. But that's my current relationship to Mario. That experience.
I think of a time we were driving back from a mall, and we yelled at a thing at some other teens that were like skateboarding in a parking lot, and they got mad at us. And then we circled back around, and we were feigned to ask them for directions, but then we yelled at them again, in a subtly way. And I thought that was very funny. And it is, yeah. I think a lot about like. I was listening to a podcast and someone talked about how they were just going out to eat and they were in like ended up being like in the background of like a prank video. Like they were just like at a restaurant while somebody was filming a prank video. And it's just like those things are always weird because it seems like what are you doing? I'm just trying to live my life. And it's an odd, but Mario. We're dodging the question about Mario.
I feel like Mario has the same vibe as the Easter Bunny, where I imagine he was like a pagan festival that was then appropriated by Nintendo in order to create these video games.
Yeah, he actually used to be green. Before Nintendo changed him to red for marketing.
Exactly.
He did.
Gosh.
He was way worse back in like the original tradition of like. It's like now, Kamara, you may be able to speak better on this than I can, but I thought it was like an old English like folk tale of like a fairy that would come from the woods and like smash turtles on the road, and that's why.
Oh right, yeah. I remember. It used to be that basically Mario would and obviously he wasn't Italian because it goes back before English people even knew Italy existed. But basically, the folklore is that Mario would, if you were naughty, he would turn you into a turtle. He was like a kind of trickster god. He would turn you into a turtle, he'd jump on you and smash you into the shell, and then he'd kick you around. And then, a lot of the stuff kind of, it's hard to tell where this kind of folklore comes from. Like the princess, shows up eventually, and Bowser shows up eventually, but we're not entirely sure where
Right.
they come from.
They're like always princesses showing up in these things.
Yeah, like there's vague ideas that maybe Bowser goes back to like some Neolithic traditions, and at some point the two kind of converge. And then obviously England has a history of like a monarchy, so a prince, the monarchy like to insert themselves into tales like this. You can imagine that maybe the princess is like a real princess who exists, but just not one of the ones anyone knows, and works their way in. It's unclear. It's unclear. But, it's a very interesting folklore.
Right. It's the messiness of oral tradition of like, it's not written down, so you have nothing to compare it to. He's like, oh, you just remember what the last guy told you.
Yeah, and it's not as well remembered as things like Santa Claus. Obviously, we have a bit more of an understanding.
Yeah.
Of that one. Whereas Mario is very much like loose traditions that kind of got bundled together at some point, and then early on in the video game industry, people were making games about anything, and they just happened to strike gold with a bit of a modern reinterpretation of Mario.
Yeah,
and
right.
The rest is history, really.
It's just.
I do think my favorite hobby is just lying.
Yes, people need to appreciate lying more. Like that, it is. I mentioned earlier that animals can't do subterfuge, and like one of the greatest parts of humanity is that we can lie for no reason whatsoever.
Whenever I meet people, it depends. Like, if I'm trying to be normal at them, I'll just be normal. But sometimes, I get introduced to a friend of a friend, and I'll just kind of make up details about myself and just never tell them the truth.
Right. It's the thing I sometimes worry about when things get a little punchier and a little sillier on the show. Of well, I understand the context of someone who likes comedy a lot, that I am lying and making jokes, but then I wonder
it's kind of like if you like arguing or having a problem thing, and then there's a lot of people where if you do that, they'll get kind of offended, or they'll think that you're, even if they're not offended, they'll think you're mad at it, and you're like, I'm not. It's not that big of a deal. You're allowed to like Marvel films or whatever. I'm just gonna complain about them.
Right.
Listen, so I realized the dangerous sound of me being and these people, they just get so offended.
Honestly, listen, we just can't. We couldn't make Marvel movies nowadays. We could. I wish. What happened to games just being fun?
Oh God.
When
that's something people actually say.
Yeah, back in the day, I used to drink my games out of the hose.
Yes, and it was we listened. I used to play my DS uphill both ways on my way to school. Back my day, there were no serious video games back in my day. They didn't have any of this stuff. They didn't have any of these.
They get their Mario just out of the tap or in bottles. Back in my day, if you got your Mario out of the tap, it would be poisonous.
Yes.
You had to go to the well.
And it would be green.
Yeah, he'd be...
it all ties together.
Right. Yeah, it's all...
I do think, treating Mario as a folklore is funny, but, to a degree, and this isn't to go so as extreme as to do the kind of annoying person thing of being Mario's actually kind of modern folklore, if you think
yes.
about it. But, I do think there's something very quintessential about Mario, and I think maybe I'm just, understanding to a degree how a Disney adult feels about, Rapunzel or whatever. But,
right.
I find it... I can hate a Mario game and I can dislike Nintendo, but I find it hard to look at Mario and not kind of feel the endearment you feel from the family pet. And
right.
You were talking about Plundercore
really
earlier,
well
and
said.
I think there's a real universal fascination with Mario. A lot of Plundercore stuff I've looked at has just been about Mario.
Yeah, he's the mascot of Plundercore.
It's why I tend to think about this weird platonic ideal of a video game character.
Platonic ideal of Mario.
Of he has no slate. He says nothing. It's why it's also it's a perfect encapsulation of pop culture criticism of you can say anything you want about Super Mario Brothers because Super Mario Brothers doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but he also kind of captures like the working class as
Oh.
well.
Yeah.
Like visually, he's
Oh.
like relatable in that way.
I don't know. I think Mario's kind of like more of a patriarchal overclass figure, you know? Of like
I guess when I think about plumbing,
yeah, like visually, Mario is based off of like
Yeah.
a proletariat, and yet in terms of his actions, he's sort of like the enforcer to the bourgeoisie.
no, totally.
Like-
That's how they trick you.
almost as if he is nothing. He
Yeah,
has
yeah.
he is everything because he is nothing.
I
It all
do find
cancels
it,
out.
I've been thinking about Pokemon Black and White a lot, and the way that a game can kind of feel like it's saying something, but actually be about nothing. Like, like a Mario plot is obviously never about anything, but you
Yeah.
can sometimes get those games that, like, kind of on their surface almost feel like they're tackling an issue, and then you kind of think about it a bit more, and it's like, there's nothing here. Like, there's nothing. Like, was it the Killing Joke? I don't know if I just made this up in my head, but I think the author of The Killing Joke in an interview once said he actually, like, his opinion on it went down over time because he realized it was just about Batman. Like, it wasn't actually about anything.
That seems
That's
like
kind of how I feel about Pokemon Black and White.
Mm-mm.
that does seem like a thing. He seems like a cool guy to Alan Moore. I kind of seems like an alright. There's a fun thing at the back of From Hell where he talks about like breaking into mausoleums or whatever.
Is Alan Moore the guy? I don't remember who it is, but the guy who wrote Keanu Reeves is like a weird mystical hunter guy. I can't remember his name. Constance or something.
John Constantine.
Constantine, thank you.
Well, he might have written so Constantine. So yes, Alan Moore originated John Constantine in Swamp Thing, of course. Constantine went on to. We don't have time to get into Hellblazer. I say as someone who owns all
the reason I
300
bring it
issues
up
of
is
Hellblazer. Yeah.
Because if it is Alan Moore, I know there's a story where he like genuinely believes that he's met Constantine in real life. Like he walked into a bar and he saw a guy in an overcoat and he's like, that was him. He was real.
He may have.
Like, did he actually like talk to him, or is he just like?
He said he got a knowing nod, so I love to imagine that it's just a guy.
He just like is, the thing you say about every guy until he becomes, you realize, oh, that was a terrible guy. Is like he just seems like a cool guy though.
Yeah.
Seems like just kind of doing his own thing. Kind of hates superheroes.
Yeah.
But kind of likes them a lot. That that kind of thing where you like something because you hate it so much.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot more than just like the visual novel pastiche where it's like people who don't like visual novels but they don't like visual novels either.
Right.
So, like there's a lot of like there's like visual novel parodies that feel a bit more like, okay, the person making this actually likes visual novels. Like Doki Doki Literature Club is like a game that I think is made like maybe they don't, maybe this is just conjecture, but it feels like a game that was made by people who actually like the medium that they're kind of pastiching a bit.
Yes.
And then you get like KFC visual novel and it's like, okay.
Right. That's like 90% of wouldn't it be funny if you dated things that you're not supposed to date? The visual novel of like, well, first, none of them are like dating sims. So let's cowards. Where are my stat sheets? Why aren't these games actually hard? Also,
if they went for some real like 90s like Elegay Dojin type, like you've got to be like constantly evaluating stats and tracking progress, and like there's like a day-night cycle that progresses every time you like go to a different scene or something, and you've got to keep track of that with no guidebook or anything.
Yeah, they need just like learn. You need to learn the form,
Yeah,
I mean,
Souls like dating sim, please.
Yes.
I think I said it in the chat of a previous radio episodes, but we do like need like Dojin circles for games.
Yeah,
like, we need to reinvent the wheel there a bit. Just get a team of like 5 freaks to make some really weird games and then take them to conventions.
Yeah, that's
cool.
I think that's the part where we've been missing more. Like we've got plenty of freaks out there making games. But they're all like living on itch. I mean, I think part of it is because they're also a lot of them are like very disparate,
Yeah.
Like they're all over the world. But I think like getting them into like, bringing them to like a comic convention, like you're sort of like, or even like, we don't have the same games. Don't have the same spaces that you can just bring self-published stuff. You kind of have to sneak your way into other places.
Yeah, you got to kind of like hope that maybe like there'll be like an anime con that lets you sell games.
Yeah.
Or, like there'll be a gaming convention where they've got like a tiny indie corner that no one goes to.
Right. I sneak into like a lot of like local markets and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is like, there are like indie game shows, but a lot of them are like games that aren't out. And that's always a really weird thing to me.
I want to choose my words carefully because I don't want to throw shots at anyone who's just trying to make games. But there's definitely like an indie game, and then there's like an indie game,
right?
Know? And a lot of the indie games that get popular are like made by maybe a couple people on a low budget, but they're very much going for the same kind of experiences as big games. Just kind of like they get more freedom to be creative within that. I'll go for a target, or not a target. I'll go for a target that's like too big that like it doesn't matter. Like Stardew Valley is like and then experimental stuff.
Right, it is right.
Free being an indie game.
It is, and it's quite it is just it's just Harvest Moon, like
yeah, and then you think maybe like if you saw a more like a more experimental indie do a farming sim, maybe they'd do it a bit more obviously they'd do it more experimentally, like maybe they'd do something a bit more interesting out there, play with the genre a bit more.
Right. It's
the creator of Stardew Valley is going to be just crying listening to this episode, knowing that
I'm sorry
finally someone said negative.
Oh, wait, I just lost a patron. Wait, oh no. All this time.
I'm sorry for punching down. I know at Indiepocalypse Incorporated, we're just so much higher above economically than Stardew Valley. But...
I'm the big dog around here. But it is like that is the kind of like it's the weird thing. Like imagine like I'm gonna go listen to an indie band and it's just like straight down the middle radio rock and you're like,
yeah.
Well, why don't I just listen to Nickelback then?
Yeah. There's. I mean, this is like the classic, like, and you can take this to an extreme of being like posers.
Yes.
Of like, there are independent artists who are trying to strike it big, and then there are independent artists who are trying to pay off enough money to keep doing what they're doing.
Yes.
And you get a lot more like weird experimental stuff through like the people who don't really care about being like, I'm gonna appeal to the audience of like Nickelback. If you liked Linkin Park 20 years ago, I'm gonna make a band that's just for you.
Linkin Park 2.
I've been waiting years for this remake.
The two eyes become Roman numerals.
I don't want to get into the Linkin Park remake that came out recently. Too many mixed thoughts on that.
I do think they are more musically interesting than a lot of their peers, though.
Yeah, totally.
That is.
I love Linkin Park. They're like,
it is the weird thing, like when you compare them to as someone who got recently into the aforementioned MCR. I was like, they're a lot more musically interesting than like the music I did not like growing up.
Yeah.
And it's like it feels bizarre, like that they're just so much better than their contemporaries.
My favorite is always when a band makes one really good album and then kind of a lot of uninteresting ones. Like imagine being a Muse fan when Origin of Symmetry comes out and you listen to that album and you're really excited, and then they make the rest of their discography.
Right. Yeah, that's like music is a very weird thing because there's those aren't sequels, but it's like sometimes we're thinking like somebody you really like made one good thing and then six bad things that you can't stand.
In music, the sequel is almost the band keeps making music. Because
right.
How many people maybe make a band, make 3 songs, and then they make a band of the exact same people, but it's a different band. Like, that feels more like starting a new series to me.
Right, and it's like a different kind of... Sequels are weird. We should I think a moratorium on sequels in games. 10 years, no more sequels.
Yeah, I hate sequels.
No more sequels, no more remakes.
Make them illegal.
Yes.
Unless you can say that from the very beginning you planned out like
Yeah.
3 sequels and you just like needed to split it up to make it realistic to release, maybe
Right.
that's fine. But when it's like, I don't think they were planning for Mario Odyssey like
No,
when they made
but
Mario.
as someone who is
That'd be
like,
hilarious.
you're right. I have an idea of he's gonna go on trips, and there's gonna be all this thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm gonna get an email from like Shigeru like Miyamoto being like,
Oh my God.
here's the design documents from 1986 of Super Mario Odyssey.
I just logged on my Patreon. I lost another patron.
Yes, seeing the creator of Stardew Valley.
Wait, smiyamoto@gmail.com? Oh no! I'm sorry. You're hemorrhaging all my money today. Which is your money. You're hemorrhaging your own money.
No.
Well, I guess not anymore. You already got that payout. But anyway, video games are silly things. We are over 2 hours. This is where I publicly declare that it's time to start wrapping up this show.
Fair enough.
Before I start talking about sequels, and I think I like that Dune a lot. And I wouldn't call that a sequel. That's more like a very long movie that they split up into two.
Yeah, it's the second half of the book.
Yeah. Anyway. Before we start to wrap up, does anyone have any like pressing statements or questions they need to get out before we get into full wrap-up mode? Non-promotional, of course, as that is part of the wrap-up.
Does anyone have a favorite Linkin Park song?
Oh, that's a good one.
Breaking the Habit.
Banging! Such a good pick.
Yeah, that song. That's a go-to karaoke song for me.
So part of why I say the wrap up, because I go on tangents and divergences. We used to, as a more reliable source to download music than LimeWire, download anime music videos. Because you knew what song you were getting 100%. And then also you got a cool anime music video to go with it. And I think a lot about Breaking the Habit because it used anime clips from Mega Man X. Zero was Breaking the Habit, I believe.
That's such a Zero song.
Yes.
It really is. Wow.
I'm also kind of in my Mega Man brain right now. I've been playing Legends, which does not have Zero in it. It's not near as Zero to be seen, but it's cool anyway. It looks.
Focus Shadow. They should focus on Zero.
Yes.
It's time for edgelord, like super cool characters. We can admit they're cool. We can bring them back.
Oh yeah.
Because they have swords. Bring characters with swords.
Shadow has a gun. Zero has a sword. It's awesome.
Here's if you're out there, you're creative and you don't quite understand things. This is how things work. If all your characters have swords, then it's cool to have a gun. If all your characters have guns, it's cool to have a sword. As long as you're.
Thank you. I'm so glad somebody said it.
It's true. Listen, no one's been brave enough to say it until now.
Thank you so much for your service.
Listen, I fight the hard fight for everyone that I can't.
We'll get you a Netflix special imminently.
I've got tape across my mouth. I've been silenced by the game industry again.
You put tape across your mouth, and in one hand you're holding a katana, and in the other hand you're holding like a Glock.
Yes.
That's the cover.
Across my chest, Dune box. Boondock Saints style.
Yes.
Anyway. Yes. And everyone else, though, I answered the question. I'm not letting the rest of you off the hook.
Sans Undertale.
No. Once again, you got the question wrong.
I think for me, I like Breaking the Habit, but my favorite song is Blackbirds, which they've never released officially because it was only available through their iOS game.
Oh wow!
like as a bonus thing. I don't remember why, but they basically released a new song only on that game and then never did a studio release of it. Like, it's it's a song you can just listen to on YouTube, but they've never put it on Spotify.
Well, folks, I've got really good news for you. We've got I'm going to put this in the chat, this very important thing. This may or may not be a what's it called? Oh, I accidentally did the let me delete how do I delete my own message? Oh well.
Whoa.
Anyway, if you want to listen to Numb, and it has the telltale Bandicam.com logo on it. the true champion of all AMVs, next to the Xvideo logo.
Oh, and it's Nightcore. That's awesome.
Oh wow. I also really, really quickly need to say "Wretches and Kings." Great Linkin Park song.
Oh, perfect. We are. I should do. There was a time I stopped doing it because it took more time to prepare. But the last Saturday show I would be an AMV night, and it was all anime music videos. And
wow.
There's now, folks, listen. You're listening. Bear with me. There's a really good one for Dragon Ball Z, set to a "Godspeed You Black Emperor" song, and it might be the greatest AMV I've ever seen. It's very good. Also a very good one. Once again, bear with me. Is a very good one for a Current 93 song for Madoka Magica. So if
I
found
a Linkin Park AMV for Huntic, so I'm gonna watch that right after the show.
Yes. So if you were in that very specific Madoka Neo Doom folk Venn diagram, you're in for a treat. But also
Thank you.
Yeah, Madoka. I realize there's a lot of Madoka AMVs because Madoka visually looks so cool.
It is a gorgeous anime.
It's got such like strong visuals to it that
the witch scenes.
Yeah, so it's like, man, if you want cool stuff to set your music to, you got them.
Some tragic lesbians in there.
Yes, and if you want to set them entirely to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, the entire album, as someone did, go out there and check them out. Okay, now, any other before we wrap up and I start talking about AMVs too much, which are also very cool. They're like the purest art form, honestly.
They are.
Because they're like a mashing of two copyrighted materials, so you cannot make any money off of it.
I said it in the Discord chat earlier, but I love copyright infringement.
Yes.
It's very good.
It is.
Yes.
It's I am. Yeah. And they mentioned during the break, Muchi, a businessman is a beast of plunder core that is in the commission space even. This plunder core aesthetic I am excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to be fancy and call it collage or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they've been saying that.
I've seen the one I've seen is Plunder Ludix, which
yes.
is
Plunder Ludix, yeah.
so many different turns of phrase, and also it's like so far from like public knowledge of like knowing what it is, but it's like
I made a YouTube video talking about it, but I'm too scared to actually send it to them.
No, you should do it. They would love that. They would so love that.
Yeah, I feel like in this it's more open, sort of like is that natural fear of like indie spaces are like closed off, of like of like, well, I'm not part of the club or whatever. I'm not a friend of Boshi, as they say.
Boshi's everybody's friend.
Yeah, he's got really cool sunglasses, and he's not that fast at racing.
But he's cool.
He's so cool.
One day I will visit Boshi's place.
Please do it.
Yeah,
Welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, if you make the trip, I would recommend it. Even as someone who ostensibly did make the trip and then did not have the time to do it, as it turned out. But yeah, no, I these kind of like alternative game spaces I think are very important.
I
And
need
like,
to see if there are any around London.
there's got to be some around there, maybe. I don't know.
Otherwise, we can make a London branch.
Yeah, Boshi. Oh my gosh. What would the name be?
I think the idea of like referring to like an underground indie space as a branch is really
Right.
Oh.
This group of 8 people as a branch of 7 people somewhere else. Yeah, right. It's all cool stuff. And speaking of cool stuff, we're going to talk about the cool stuff you people do and how can people find the aforementioned cool stuff. We're going to go around in the circle of the screen if you're looking at the screen. Lucas, where can people find your stuff if they're looking to find your stuff?
The biggest one is you can listen very carefully and type in the remake of the end of the greatest RPG of all time into Google or Steam or something and find that. I also have a Twitter. I think if you just look up Lucas Emmanuel, my last name is spelled so weird. It's Immanuel. That you will find me, and I will let you know if I release things. I will not be shy.
Yeah. So, well, this is what you do. This thing where you say, "Go ahead and wishlist it." Granted, that's like an impossible task because that becomes the thing to do. Everybody does it, and if everybody does it, doesn't that raise the bar of what needs to be wishlisted? Who knows?
Yes.
Well, is it one of those like tricks that people are like, oh yeah, this is the secret that you do. You make sure you have a lot of wish lists, and then large companies do the exact same thing, and then you're like,
yes, it's so weird to see like a AAA game that ends with wish list on Steam.
right. But it's so easy. I wish listed it just now. Such a simple task. Yeah.
Thank you.
Whenever people say wish list a thing, I just do that, even if I don't buy it right away. But I'm also someone who like doesn't. I am one of those people who you don't want to hear about when you're making something. Is like, oh well, yeah, I like to get around to things, but I don't always get around to them right away. But it's like that person who buys something 20 years later to go, yeah, oh yeah, I'm really getting into Stalker nowadays. Stalker the movie, of course, not the game.
It's a good movie.
It is a good movie. I think I think about it all the time.
I mean, I've been watching The Matrix for the first time, so I'm definitely in the same boat of
yes.
getting around to things a bit.
Oh wow, I have to watch that still.
That was the first R-rated movie I saw.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yes, because it was one of those like it was R-rated for violence. There wasn't naked people or anything. So it's not it falls within the Protestant restrictions. Oh, it's just people getting shot. There's nothing wrong there. There's a lot of kung fu in it.
Oh yeah.
That Keanu's a cool guy.
It's pretty neat.
He's kind of it's weird. Like anyway, we're not going to talk about Keanu. We don't have time to go to a digression about Keanu Reeves. He's anyway.
You know what they say? Any non-digression about Keanu Reeves in itself is talking about Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. If you ever think he's wouldn't watch My Private Idaho, is what I'll say. He's truly charming front to back of that movie. And you're like, wow, this guy's actually incredibly charismatic. Why did I have this negative impression of him in culture as him being kind of stiff? Maybe it's the material. Chimera.
Yes.
Your work. Where can we find it?
It's everything that I have. You can just type Chimera Royal in wherever the URL is. So
yes.
like twitter.com/Chimera Royal, chimeraroyal.itch.io, Linktree, but with the E is after the dot /Chimera Royal. And my website is chimera.world, but beware, it is just the basic like Bridgetown website layout right now.
One might argue
Oh, and
better than most websites. The ideal version of a website.
and my YouTube is Technojester.
Perfect.
Not Chimera Royale.
The one place where you did not maintain consistency.
Brand unison. I'm all about that. I'm all about that brand identity vomit.
Yes. Please make sure
I unfortunately run my Twitter like a Tumblr, so I just retweet constantly and don't really do a good job at keeping professional. So I'm just retweeting like memes and cool art all the time, which I hear is not how you're meant to run a Twitter, but who cares?
I post about 5 times a month. Is that how you're supposed to run a Twitter?
Yeah, I say power to you.
Yeah. I post I post 4 radio shows in a release basically. And then
It's consistent branding.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes if people will submit a game to be part of the tape market, which I'll allude to later, then I'll do another post on a Friday. So there might be like 6 or 7 posts in a month.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, you're right. The Tape Club does change over on Wednesdays. This Tape Club month, of course, being Hit Me trilogy. Highly recommend. But that's aside the fact. Jude, hello.
Hello.
Where can people find your stuff if they're looking to find it?
Yeah, you could type in Garden Robot on itch. Also Garden_robot on Twitter, or if you just look up Jude Garden Robot, my stuff will pop up.
Yes.
My website is also gardenrobot.net. But yeah, that's about it.
What's your YouTube channel? Same thing?
Gosh, if I do have one, yeah, there's probably like 3 videos.
Perfect. At least some people on this call can maintain brand consistency. Speaking of maintaining brand consistency, Indiepocalypse. You search for it, you'll probably get me. I've become the king of SEO for that term, as it turns out. Occasionally, someone will write an embarrassing article thinking there's such thing as Indiepocalypse, but I feel like that's gone with the wayside. But otherwise, you can of course go to indiepocalypse.com or preachsprings.h.io and purchase Indiepocalypse, and then two to 3 people here will eventually get a $5 payout from Itch, or from me rather. From me, the third person is waiting on their $5 payout from Itch. Yeah, so if you're on while you're on Itch, go to Lucas's Itch and buy one of his games for $3.
Please, I'm begging you. It's been years.
Everyone listening to this show, I command you, go to all of our itch.ios and purchase a game for $3.
Yes.
Go Miami.
Your $3. Let's start a hype train, everyone. Let's go. That's what those are, right? Close
enough.
What if instead of trading $3, we traded $6? Like the Indiepocalypse, I'm taking Indiepocalypse at its core takes the old adage of game dev is trading the same $5 back and forth forever, and makes it, what if game dev was trading the same $20 back and forth forever? And you can do that, but of course, by going to indiepocalypse.com/submit, submitting your game, not getting something, holding a grudge for 2.5 years. And then what else? I alluded to it. Please, I'm hemorrhaging game developers constantly. Game developer royalties keeps unsubbing for my Patreon. Please subscribe. Indiepocalypse.com/Patreon. If you want to go there, if you want to get also $5 for just the commissioned games, which is frankly a bargain, I think, if you're looking for like one of those monthly indie game subscriptions, but you're like, what if they made real weird shit? I like, Punkcake is a friend of the show. I like them. They're past contributors. But I'm like, what if you want some really weird shit? And then you're like, I also want video games that aren't really weird shit, but are also still kind of really weird in their own different way. That Punkcake is also good for that. There's more, there's an exciting world of people trying to, build a more sustainable model out there. And it's good that they come in different flavors is what I'm saying. There is not a singular right way to do it. And the hope is that they will all thrive. I got sidetracked. I got to Twitter brain for a second, where when you accidentally think you say something that somebody might misinterpret, and you have to backpedal and write a 30 tweet thread to clarify that you didn't mean anything by it.
You now have 0 patrons.
I knew it. Anyway.
-1 patron. You're now paying some other random guy.
That's what Indiepocalypse is. Indiepocalypse is my own weird reverse Patreon that I do every month. Where 10 game developers give me cool games for me to play. And one artist makes a nice piece of art that I can look at. But I alluded to it. The tape market, indiepocalypse.com/tape if you want to get Indiepocalypse in these physical cassette tape formats, or pizzapranks.com/tape market if you want to get one of like 20 or 30 games available in this physical format. And those are like other more like, indie games around the world in your house. Get them. There's some. They're not available for sale, but if you go, I think there maybe are there some still available at Boshi's place. I know I made some.
Oh yeah, I did see some there.
Those with, so I remember because I was anyway. We're down there. We're shutting down the show. We're wrapping it up.
Has Lucas plugged yet?
Yes, Lucas was first.
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yes. See, you have not done the thing where you remember that you had to remember the very long title, and you have forgotten it. Anyway, that title, of course, being the remake of the end of the greatest RPG of all time. Wrapping up, Lucas.
Oh yeah, no, I did. I literally heard you plug it. I've got it open in my browser right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. But what did you plug? Chimera, shoot! Thank you all for joining me here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a true pleasure to have you all. So much fun.
It's lovely to be here.
Great to have you doing your things. Where's my thing? There you are. I had to find my foobar so I could end the show. Oh wait! Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.